Hey gang, Neil here. We pick up where we left off with the last video. We're in the process of creating the value scale color wheel. The last video we went through mixing a string of yellow, introduced the concepts of home value, full chroma, and passage. So we will get back into it. We're going to start with yellow, yellow, red, and move on from there. What you'll see different with this video and the remaining, at least in the creation of the color wheel, I'm going to start transitioning between clips so that I'll show you where the home values are of the hue that we're mixing, and then transition out so that I can mix the string without you having to sit there and watch me. So away we go. There we go. Let me set my timer. I'm going to try to blow through a couple of these strings. There we go. Okay, so we have the color wheel in front of us. We mixed our string of yellow. We move on to yellow, yellow, red, or yellow, orange, if you want to use old school language, non-Munsell language. The tubes that we will need are cadmium yellow, medium. In the case of Winsor Newton, it's just cadmium yellow. Other brands like Gamblin will list cadmium yellow medium. When you look at it, you'll see, pardon me, it clearly has a bias towards orange as opposed to the cadmium yellow light. We need raw umber. If you remember from the last video, raw umber was the shade or the darkening agent we used to darken yellow. We can't just use the raw umber in this case, though. We have to add something else to it. And one thing I want to get to that I neglected to mention in the last video, because some of you may have been asking yourselves when I mentioned that raw umber, pardon me, was a dark yellow, you might have asked yourself, well, how does he know that? Why is it dark yellow? Just because he said so? No, it's because, and this is one of the things that Munsell was able to do with his, when he put his wheel together. He had a better understanding of color knowledge in the sense that what he had available then, and it's still available now, is what's called a spectrophotometer. Spectrophotometer is a machine that actually measures the wavelength of color. So in terms of why raw umber is yellow, well, it's because it's been measured, and raw umber falls at the yellow portion of the color wheel in terms of its hue. So back to the what I was saying. The raw umber then, because it is yellow, or falls at yellow in terms of its hue, if we add this to the cadmium yellow, or yellow, yellow, red, it will darken it just like it did to the yellow. But what it will also do is it will begin to pull the hue of the yellow, yellow, red toward yellow. If this is a dark yellow, if I add it to this, and remember one of the things I went over with the last video, what we're trying to do with these strings is to make a series of values but keep the hue consistent. So if I just add raw umber to this, yellow, yellow, red, if raw umber is yellow, a dark yellow, this will certainly darken my yellow, yellow, red, but it will pull it toward yellow in the spectrum of hues. So the only way I can counteract that is I need to bring in some burnt umber. Burnt umber in the hue circuit, or the hue of burnt umber, I should say, is orange or yellow red. So let's get the color wheel out here just so we can clearly visualize these things. Raw umber is yellow. Burnt umber is a dark orange or yellow red. So if I want to mix a darkening agent, a shade to darken yellow, yellow, red, then I can't just mix either this or this with the yellow, yellow, red. I need to bracket or combine them so that I make a dark yellow, yellow, red to darken the cadmium yellow, or cadmium yellow medium. I hope that makes sense. So the home value of yellow, yellow, red, or cadmium yellow in this case, or cad yellow medium, is an 8. And remember what I mentioned from the last video, manufacturers are not making their pigments to be Munsell specific in terms of the value scale. So, you know, there are some situations, a lot of situations where once you mix the scale out, you might notice that, or even if I were to take this and put it right on the 8, it's actually an 8 minus, but it's not as dark as a 7. So I'm putting it in the best possible location I can determine on the value scale, although it's not perfect. It's not a perfect 8, but that's the closest value that it relates to. So we have home value of cadmium yellow, or cad yellow medium, is an 8. Down at the 2, we're going to bracket. We're going to mix these two together. The burnt umber, take 1 dollop of raw umber, which is our yellow, an equal dollop of burnt umber at the 2 as well, because the home value of burnt umber is a 2, just like the home value of raw umber is 2. So we take these two tubes of paint together, a dark yellow and a dark yellow red or orange, and mix them together so that we come up with a dark yellow, yellow red, or yellow orange. Mix it together at the 2. Now we're going to pause. I'll mix the string and I'll be back. Okay, we're back. So, string of yellow, yellow, red mixed. So what did I do since I left you last? Well, if you remember, home value of yellow, yellow, red, which is our cad yellow or cad yellow medium, depending on what brand you use, is an 8. The home value of the shade, or the thing we're going to use to darken the yellow, yellow, red, is a 2, and this is our combination of burnt umber and raw umber. So I have to then, to make the string, I've got to, obviously mix the values. So anytime you're going above the home value, you're just mixing with white. So to get the 9, I started with a little bit of white and added a little touch of my cad yellow into it to get a 9. For 7 to 3, I took my cad yellow and added it to, or darkened it with my bracketed 2 value, which is the combination of raw umber, burnt umber. So I took this, brought some of it down here, and just continued to add more and more of this combination, this bracketed combination, to darken it. And finally, at the 1, I took a little bit of the bracketed combination and added some black to it. And remember from the last video, every time I mix up a value, I'm putting it on the value scale to check against my series of grays. If you remember what we're looking for, if I'm mixing a 7, 6, or 5, whatever value, I'm going to put it on that particular area of the value scale and actually lay it on the value scale and squint and look for passage. If I'm not sure that it's matching, then I'll put it on the one that's darker to the left, the one that's lighter to the, the one that's darker to the right, the one that's lighter to the left. And in this case, if I'm trying to look for a 6, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. To check this, I'm going to put it right on the 6. If I'm still not sure whether it's correct, then I'll put some of the 6 on the 5 value, some of the 6 on the 7 value. If the patch that I put on the 7 value looks darker, if the patch I put on the 5 value looks lighter, then I know that mixture is somewhere close to a 6. So I have my yellow, yellow, red string mixed out. Last thing, the only thing left to do, paint it down. Get my value scale color wheel. And just as a refresher, or I should say reminder, I'm going to put this up here, my palette up here. Start first with the hue circuit. And if you remember from the last video, the hue circuit is the patch or the swatch that I put at the hue circuit is always, the full chroma value. So that's one thing I neglected to mention, my apology. For yellow, yellow, red, the 8 value is the home value, but it's also the full chroma. So this is the value that I'm going to put on the hue circuit. Get a little bit of my Neo McGilp, take my 8 value, put it on the hue circuit. And since I have it on my paintbrush, I might as well go ahead and drop it in its appropriate spot, right? Its appropriate spot on the value scale, right? 8, 8. And since I'm here and I have it, since I'm going to be doing these at the same time, add it to the hue circuit of the pigment file. Now, just like with the Cad Yellow Light, if you're having a problem getting the opacity, if you could see some of the gray or whatever ground you have down coming through, just let it dry and give it another shot. So I started with my full chroma and home value. Oh, where are those paper towels? There they are. And then move on down the string. Nine. Try to make it as opaque as possible. We are going to run into some color families when we get over to red, purple, and the red, purple, that it's so transparent at certain values that you really are going to need 2 coats to get any opacity. We already put the 8, so move down to the 7. 6. 5. 'Which is just a touch dark. And how do I know that? Because it's coming out of Passage. Just a touch. Remember from the last video, I mentioned that as you're constructing this, at least for me, because I have a 5 value gray as the ground, the 5 value for each one of these strings, I should be seeing some Passage at that value if I have it mixed properly. 4. 3. 2. Which is that straight combination of burnt umber and raw umber. And 1. Small patch. That's our yellow, yellow, red. One thing I didn't mention, some of you may have had a question. It's the, I'm going to put this aside for right now. It just so happens in this case that I could get away with mixing the burnt and raw umber at a 50-50 ratio. We're not always lucky to be able to do that when you're mixing 2 paints. Each pigment has what's called its tinting strength. It's how fast it tints white. So some colors have a higher tinting strength than others. If any of you have already painted or have had some painting experience, have ever worked with phthalo pigments, they have an incredibly high tinting strength. So the effect is that a very small amount of phthalo will influence any color that it's mixed into, or white. The burnt umber and raw umber don't have exactly the same tinting strength, but they're similar enough that we can get away with a 50-50 combination. As we go into some of the other color families and we start bracketing, we're not going to be able to do that. Because of various tinting strengths, you'll hear me talk about how we have to vary the combination to make sure one hue doesn't gobble up another hue. So with that, we're going to take a break, and I'll get the materials out for the next hue. We're back. Moving on to the next string, which is yellow red or orange. We have cadmium orange and burnt umber. We discussed with the last segment that raw umber is a dark, weak chroma yellow. Burnt umber is a dark, weaker chroma orange, or in this case, yellow red. So home value is 7 of the Cad orange. Home value of burnt umber is 2. And before I forget to mention, home value and full chroma is a 7. Take a little break. I'll mix the string, and I'll be back. We're back with our string of yellow red. Reminder, cadmium orange, home value full chroma 7. Burnt umber, home value 2. Just added white to the 7, or I should say took some white and added a little bit of the 7 to it for my 9 and my 8. For 6, 5, 4, and 3, I took some of my burnt umber, darkened my cadmium orange to create the in-between values. Took some of my burnt umber, added a little bit of black. Gives me my full string of yellow, yellow, red. Let's get it on our color wheel first. Value scale color wheel. I'm going to move the palette up as usual. I need more table space. More tables. So, start with the full chroma value, which is the 7, or cadmium orange. Add it to the hue circuit. And since I have it on the paintbrush, might as well put it in the 7 value position. Its home value, 987. Take a sec to add it to my pigment file. And finish the string. Oops. Nine. 8. We already have the 7. Jump to our 6. 5. A little bit lighter. Closer to passage. There we go. Picking up some glare, but nothing I can do about that. 4. And a reminder, mixing that string. 3. What you didn't see was when I mixed the values, I was dropping them on my value scale, trying to make sure that all the values are as consistent as possible within reason. 2, which is our straight burn umber, and 1, the burn umber with a little black. So you can see as these start to go down, you get a few of these strings next to each other. When you look at each row, right, each ring, you should see similarities of value. There might be, as I mentioned, keep mentioning, slight discrepancies, particularly when you're dealing with home values, if they're plus or minus, but you should be seeing the same flow of value, similar flow of value. Take a break, get into our next hue. Red, yellow, red. Okay, we're back. So red, yellow, red, or red, orange. Cadmium red light, which is 5. Oops. Burnt umber, and we add another color now, alizarin crimson. The reason is, let's go back to our color wheel. For red, yellow, red, or red, orange, we do not have a single tube of paint that you can get off the rack that will give us a dark red, yellow, red. So for red, yellow, red, just like for yellow, yellow, red, we have to bracket to get a dark value, red, yellow, red, to darken our Cad red light. And what we're going to use, if you remember bracketing, we're going to grab the 2 closest available hues or tubes of paint at the value that we need or close to it. In this case, we're going to continue to use that burnt umber, but we've got to step over actually 2 families to a dark red that we can use, which is red, red, purple, which is alizarin crimson. So we're going to have to bracket between the red, red, purple and the burnt umber in a certain combination, which we'll talk about in a second, to give us our red, yellow, red. So, home value full chroma of Cad red light is 5. At the 2. In this case, sorry, I'll get this back again. Because burnt umber is here, alizarin crimson is here, you'll notice we've got 2 families that we're going to have to bracket. We're going to bracket first for the red, yellow, red. We're also going to have to bracket for red. So in the combination of these 2 colors, alizarin and burnt umber, the red, yellow, red will have more burnt umber in it because it's closer to orange. The red, as you see in a sec, when we mix out the red, is going to have more alizarin crimson in it because the red is obviously closer to alizarin crimson. So we're going to simplify it. For the darkening agent for red, yellow, red, at the 2 value, we're going to do 2 parts burnt umber. Again, we want to be heavier on the burnt umber because this is a red that's closer to orange. And 1 part alizarin crimson. Mix those together. And we'll take a break. I will mix this up and be back in a jiff. Okay, back. I have my string of red, yellow, red, or red, orange mixed up. If you remember, the Cad red light is a 5. Home value full chroma. Just added white, or I should say added this to white for my 9, 8, 7, 6, my tints. For my 4 and 3, I had my burnt umber and alizarin crimson mixed at 2 parts burnt umber, 1 part alizarin crimson. Took this to darken my Cad red light for my 4 and 3. Added a little black to the 2 value for my 1. Paint it down. Value scale color wheel. Get the full chroma, that Cad red light. Put it on the hue circuit first. Full chroma, and again, since it's on my brush, 98765. Add it to the value scale. and the pigment file. Now, one thing that makes this, I've been talking about how the 5s will all look consistent with passage. It's going to be a little more difficult to tell with the Cad Red Light, although it is designated at a 5, that's its home value. Because it is so chromatic, it's hard to tell that 5 is where it belongs. But as I said, when you're mixing, or if you take the Cad Red Light and put it on the 6, it's a little bit darker than the 6, definitely lighter than the 4, so 5 is where it sits. Now to the rest of the string. Nine. 8. 7. There's some sirens outside. 6. We already put the 5 in. 4. 3. 2, which is our bracketed alizarin raw umber, and 1. Actually looks like, from the look of it here, looks like my 4 could come down just a hair darker, just looking at it in relation to the other values that are next to it. Just a hair more. That's a little better. We will take a little break. Oh, and here's a good example. You could see this looks like there's a big visual jump. Now, as I said, the Cad Red Light, because it's so chromatic, it's hard to see the relationship between the 5, and quite honestly, the Cad Red Light is probably a 5 plus, so there's a little bit of a jump here. Nothing we can do about it. It's just the way it is. Take a break and get to the next hue, which is red. Okay, we're back. Once again, we're getting into red. Red is cadmium red medium. This is actually Rembrandt's Cad Red Deep, but their Cad Red Deep looks like most other brands' Cad Red Medium. So Cad Red Medium at a 4 value, home value. The 4 is also the full chroma. At the 2, we have those same 2 colors that we had to bracket for the red, yellow, red, burnt umber and alizarin crimson. But if you remember with the last string with the red, yellow, red, there was a heavier combination, or there was more burnt umber in the combination. It was 2 parts burnt umber, 1 part alizarin crimson. For this, because we're moving closer to the alizarin, we're going to have 2 parts alizarin, 1 part burnt umber. So, 4 value, home value, full chroma. At the 2, 2 parts alizarin, 1 part burnt umber. Because again, what we're trying to do with each one of these strings is, as much as possible, to make sure that the hue is consistent throughout the string. To reiterate, I'm going to repeat myself. If I just added burnt umber to this Cad Red Deep, Cad Red Medium, sorry, it would darken it, to be sure, but the hue would pull to yellow, red, or orange. So I'm adding the alizarin to make sure that as much as possible that the hue remains consistent. We'll take a break, we'll mix it up, be back in a jiff. Okay, we're back with a string of red. So reminder, Cad Red Medium, 4 value, home value and full chroma. The darkening agent, the shade, is a combination 2 parts alizarin crimson, 1 part burnt umber. To mix 5 on up, I took white and just added more and more Cad Red Medium to it. So 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, just to have white in them. Took the Cad Red Medium, darkened it with my 2 value shade of alizarin and burnt umber for my 3. Added a little black. Now it's not just a matter of the camera. Things look like they get a little jammed up in here. Again, problem, a little bit of an issue. The Cad Red Medium is not exactly a solid dead-on 4. It's like a 4+. So things get a little jammed up in here. But again, the Cad Red Medium fits best at the 4. It's lighter than a 3, darker than a 5. So we're going to deal with it, stick with it. So this up. Home value. Out on the hue circuit. And at the 4. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. And here again, you'll see it's a little bit lighter than the 4 here because it's actually somewhere between a 4 and a 5. It is what it is. And the pigment file. The other thing you can use, and I have used, instead of Cad Red Medium, you could even switch to Cad Red Deep. Still going to be a 4, still full chroma at a 4. It's just a hair darker in value than the Cad Red Medium, and it shifts towards purple just a little bit more. With various color wheels, I've kind of gone back and forth between the two. Right now I'm using the Cad Red Medium. But as I said, if you do have Cad Red Deep, you can use that. And we put down the string. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4, 3, 2, which is our bracketed alizarin, umber, and 1. Okay. This. Okay, so we got through from yellow, yellow, red. Oh, focus here. We got through from yellow, yellow, red all the way to red. I think we're going to stop here. I'm going to pause here for now, and we'll pick up with this. With the next video, we'll pick up with red, red, purple, and move on from there. So until then, see you soon.